All right, welcome guys. Today we're going to do part 6 of my Atlantis video series. Today we're going to be talking about bullfighting, bull leaping, and bull sacrifice. So, in the Critias, Plato relates, excuse me, this bull sacrifice ritual that the Atlanteans would carry out. They would assemble every 5th and 6th year, alternately, to give equal honor to both the even and the odd. So that might be a little bit of Pythagorean influence coming in through Plato here. And they had a pillar of orichalcum, which is a mythical kind of metal, which had their laws and an oath inscribed upon it. And they had bulls in the precinct, of the Temple of Poseidon, roaming at large. The 10 princes, when they assembled, would pray that they could capture a suitable sacrificial victim, after which they hunted the bulls with staves and nooses, but no weapon of iron. And whatsoever bull they captured, they led up to the pillar and cut its throat over the top of the pillar, raining down blood on the inscription. They also consecrated all the limbs of the bull. They mixed some of its blood into the wine and drank it. And when they were done, they gave their judgment, wrote it on a gold tablet, and dedicated the tablet along with their robes as a memorial of the ritual. So, interestingly, we do have some, we have a lot of evidence of bull sacrifice and bull worship throughout the Near East and the Mediterranean world. But specifically, we do have some really close analogs, which are interesting. This is from a Latin poet, Prudentius, in the 4th century AD, who's describing a ritual known as the Torabolium, which is mostly associated with the cult of Magna Mater, but as you can see here, it's also being performed in Gaul. They have some archaeological evidence at these sites for the Torabolium. And different sources say different things about the Torabolium. A lot of the details are debated, which is what this article is talking about. But at least in this first-hand account from the Latin poet Prudentius, what he's saying is they would have a platform that was perforated, and they would lead the sacrificial bull on top of it, and they would have a priest down below, and they would kill the bull in such a way that the blood gushed out and rained down through the perforations in the floor onto the priest, who would cover himself in it, even putting it in his mouth. So, very, very interesting. So after they kill it, through the many ways afforded by the 1,000 chinks, it passes in a shower, dripping a foul rain, and the priest in the pit below catches it, holding his filthy head to meet every drop, and getting his robe and his whole body covered with corruption. Laying his head back, he even puts his cheeks in the way, placing his ears under it, exposing lips and nostrils, bathing his very eyes in the stream, not even keeping his mouth from it, but wetting his tongue, until the whole of him drinks the dark gore. So that's a very close parallel to the Atlantean sacrifice, in that instead of cutting the bull's throat over a pillar, they're substituting a priest for the pillar. So they're cutting the bull's throat over a priest instead. You could see how over generations a substitution like that might be made if this ritual was being handed down. Remember, they also hunted after the bulls with staves and nooses, but no weapon of iron. A lot of researchers, including, like Randall Carlson, has pointed out that this has a lot of similarities to the Torrada e Corda tradition of the Azores Islands, where they kind of they control a bull with a rope around its neck, with no intent to kill it, right? So no metal weapons, just with nooses of rope, not so much the staves, but very interesting connection there. So we have leading the bull around with a rope in the west of the Mediterranean. We have this Toribolium sacrifice. It's kind of spread around. And going back very ancient, with the Tas Tepeler culture that started as early as 9600 BC in the Near East, Anatolia. We have this site of Sayburc, who in this carving, you can see there's a figure, seems to be crouched and in motion. Curiously, on this hand, there are 6 fingers, which we'll talk about in a later video. And he's holding what looks to be a sling, an inverted snake, or a rattle, right here. So this quality isn't too good, but if you zoom in on that, to me it just looks like a noose of rope of some kind, right? So again, just like the Atlantean ritual, they hunted after the bulls with staves and nooses, but no weapon of iron. So this could be a connection to the Atlantean ritual insofar as that part, but also you have crouching and in motion. A lot of people have interpreted this as an early depiction of bull leaping, right? Because it looks like he might be mid-jump here. Maybe he has to pull off some acrobatics to avoid getting injured by the bull while he tries to capture it with nothing but a noose, right? A piece of rope. And then, of course, off to the side here, you also have a one of the oldest masters of animals depictions, a figure flanked by large felines on either side. So that's not the only connection with the Tas Tepeler. So recall that in the Atlantean ritual, they had a pillar made of orichalcum on which their laws are inscribed. So this implies that the Atlanteans had writing way back in 9600 BC. And where's the other place where we have evidence for writing in 9600 BC? Well, and the Tas Tepeler culture. So this inscription here is from Göbekli Tepe, again dating 9600, 9500 BC or so. That's the oldest Tas Tepeler site that's been reliably dated with radiocarbon. And the Assyriologist Irving Finkel claims that this is indeed a form of full-on pictographic writing, so essentially hieroglyphs. So if Tas Tepeler had hieroglyphic writing already at 9600 BC, and they have something that's somewhat analogous to part of the Atlantean bull ritual, it's very interesting, the parallels. And researchers like Graham Hancock have speculated that the Tas Tepeler culture and Göbekli Tepe was constructed by refugees from Atlantis. And the timing does line up, that right after Atlantis falls, you have this relatively very advanced society pop up immediately on the other end of the Mediterranean. Not only that, but we do have Oryx's sacrifice at Göbekli Tepe, perhaps, signified by these carefully executed slaughter marks, which may signify sacrifice. The Tas Tepeler has a lot of interesting iconography in it as well. This head from Navali Chori has either a ponytail or a snake on the back of it, and anyone who's familiar with Tantra or Vedic traditions will immediately probably think of Kundalini energy, which is represented as a snake which ascends up the body to the head. And other people have noted other parallels with Indian traditions and Tas Tepeler sites, but that's an interesting connection that we'll talk about in another video also. And another iconographic connection is Karahan Tepe. We see some hints of what could be maybe Egyptian pharaonic iconography. So we have this fake beard here that looks like it's been broken off, and also a headdress which looks a bit reminiscent of the pharaonic headdress. Now, to get back to the Atlantean ritual, we also have in West Europe a little bit later, we have Ergra, which is a site with a lot of menhir, which are these huge standing stones. You could call them pillars, right? And also the tumulus of Ergra is associated with bovine sacrifice. Okay. And they're saying that they already had domesticated bulls, around like 5,000 BC almost. And I would be very interested to know if they ever found any bull blood on these pillars, because that would be an even closer analog to the Atlantean ritual, right? And in previous videos, we mentioned the Magdalenian culture of West Europe and how they're associated with the invading Atlanteans in Europe. Well, the ones that followed them in the West, one of the cultures is the Azilian, and there's some overlap here. So the Magdalenian Azilian tradition is gradual, so there's some continuity. And the Azilian has a lot of not only horse engravings, but also this particular piece known as the Shining Bull. And as you can see, the symbolism here, the lines here, indicate some kind of sacralization. It's almost like a halo of light around the bull. So it speaks to a very early, very late Paleolithic, early Holocene, pre-Neolithic veneration of cattle, which is very interesting. All the way in West Europe, where the Atlanteans, again, would have made landfall. We also mentioned Ibero-Maurusians in the past vids as the African branch of the invading Atlanteans. They also used bovine horn cores in their burials, which are placed in a way that is suggestive of ritual or symbolic usage. We also have boo crania, which are like cattle crania and horns set into walls as a decoration in Tel Caramel, as well as Catalhoyuk very early on, so like 9,000 BC, and then Catalhoyuk is a bit later, like 6,000 or so. And again, this painting here at Catalhoyuk has been interpreted by some as bull leaping, because you got very small human figures painted, and then one of them is on top here. So we also have bull leaping throughout the Minoan world, and even in Syrian clay cylinders, we have some bull leaping. So as far as the Atlantean version, right, we have the bull sacrifice over the pillar, which we have an analog in the Torabolium, substituting a priest for the pillar. And we might have a connection in West Europe with some of these menhir and some early bovine sacrifice. We also have a parallel where the Atlantean kings would hunt for the bull with staves and nooses, but no weapon of iron, in the Tirata Accorda, where they would control the bull with, again, nooses, so rope, with no intent to kill it. And perhaps here at Sayburc, we have something linking the bull leaping and the bull fighting with the rope. So this could be the genesis of where the bull leaping comes from, right? So over time, these various traditions morph and evolve based on the local culture that they're in. So perhaps this acrobatic element of the bull jumping was added as, like a display of athleticism or virility. Or perhaps it was just necessary to avoid getting gored by the bull. And then later it got incorporated into other rituals and it became the main thing, right? The bull leaping of the Minoans. And also the fact that this guy has 6 fingers is very interesting, and we'll definitely talk about that in a later video. But not only that, we have pictographic hieroglyphic writing popping up seemingly, kind of almost out of nowhere in Göbekli Tepe. Although there's been a lot of vids going around lately about people talking about the Aurignacians and the, other much earlier people who had markings that may have been a form of proto-writing. So it's interesting to think about where that may have come from. And again, connections with Tas Tepeler to Indian traditions, perhaps, and as well as Egyptian via the iconography here, although that's a bit speculative. But, again, the Tas Tepeler was very early, and they're right around the center from where the Neolithic Revolution spread out. So it would make sense that they would influence all these other cultures that received the Neolithic Revolution later. The rest of the Mediterranean, but also India and Egypt as well. So it's very interesting to think about. Thank you guys for watching. Next time we will cover early horse domestication.